आपण हेच बंद करून टाका.
So today we'll be starting off with the Vedic age. Vedic age. मॉडर्न के लिए बाद में 1 2 लगते हैं मुझे मैं ले लेती बट
देखो ये अपने में ठीक है
कल करेंगे मैं इधर वैसे भी 3 दिन आ रही हूँ तो कल से मॉडर्न पढ़ेंगे.
ओके.
So we'll be starting off with the Vedic culture today. And the Vedic age basically comprises of 4 periods or like of 4 Vedas. What are those 4 Vedas? Atharva Veda, right. So the first is the Rig Veda. The second is Yajur Veda. Third is Sam. And the fourth Veda is called as the Atharva Veda. The Rig Veda is also called as the early Vedic age. And all of these three other Vedas, that is the other ones, like the second, third, and fourth, together are clumped together, and they are like said to be the later Vedas, or the later Vedic age. So this forms the basics of Hinduism. Fine. The early Vedic age, that is the Rig Veda. Starts from 1500 BC to 1000 BC. And the later Vedic starts from 1000 BC and it goes up to 600 BC. Sorry. This is the timeline or the time period of these ages. The Vedic age is also called as the Iron Age. Why Iron Age? Because this tool was newly discovered in this age. So after the decline of the Harappan culture, we find the invasion of the Aryans. Aryans are nothing but the Rigvedic people or the Vedic people in general. Aryans, basically. So the cities of the Harappan culture had declined by 1500 BC, or consequently, their economic and administrative system had slowly declined. Right? So just like how we said, that the early Vedic age starts from the 1500 BC, because we find the destruction or the decline of the Harappan cities here in 1500. This is when the Aryans invaded Harappa, or the Indus Valley civilization. Around this period, the speakers of Indo-Aryan language called as Sanskrit entered the northwest India from the Indo-Iranian region. So at this point in time, which is during like 1500 BC, the speakers of the Indo-Aryan languages, we call the Aryans as like the Rigvedic people as Aryans. So they entered the northwest India from the Indo-Iranian region. The initial settlements were in the valleys of the northwest and the plains of the Punjab. So basically, the Rigvedic people, वो पहले किधर like ये होता है पंजाब में, that is Indus के इधर ही. And later on, during the later Vedic period, basically, they moved down to the Ganga. So when they come from the very northwest region, they first settle in the plains of the Indus. And then afterwards, gradually they migrate towards the plains of the Ganga during the later Vedic age. And they were like cattle rearing people. So Aryans were basically cattle rearing people. So primarily they'd come to India, like or like they had been searching for like pastures. Why? Because they were like cattle rearing people, and for rearing cattle you need pastures, that is grass. So in search of grasslands, they came to India basically, or in the Indian subcontinent. So it was only because of the cattle that they had to migrate from one place to another. Because cattle को क्या लगता है खाने के लिए? Grass लगता है. और तो फिर वही उसी like इसमें like to like uh, have like food for their like cattle, they started migrating from one place to another. So which is why they migrated to the Indus Valley. In the 6th century BC, they occupied the whole of North India, which was referred to as Aryavarta. So basically, North India में जो भी ये लोग settle हो गए, उस area को अपन बोलते हैं आर्यवर्ता. And basically, this is the North India. और South India को basically Dravidian land बोलते हैं अपन, Dravidian. तो ये जो Aryans थे, we would call them as Aryans, ऋग्वेदिक पीपल को. और जो पहले के जो लाइक अपने हरप्पन्स थे जिनको लाइक इन लोगों ने मारा था, तो उनको दस्यु बोलते थे बेसिकली. दस्यु और बेसिकली स्लेव्स थे ये. And who later became the Dalits basically, or the like Shudras basically at the end of this uh, later Vedic age. And the period between 1500 BC to 6000 BC may be divided into early Vedic age and the later Vedic age. So early Vedic age, as I've written here, is from 1500 BC to 1000 BC, and the later Vedic age, that is the Yajurveda, Samveda, and Atharva Veda, these together combined, the time span is from like 1000 BC to 600 BC. So there are like three theories, या फिर like दो theories I guess, हाँ, जिससे अपन बोलते हैं कि like okay, Aryans might have entered from here or from here, or else Aryans might be like natives or like like residents of some places basically. किधर से आए थे? Where did they come from? So the first theory कौन सी है कि they might have come from the Arctic region. Some say that they might have come from Germany, and some say that they might have come from Central Asia or southern Russia. So Bal Gangadhar Tilak, he says that Aryans might have come from the Arctic region. Fine. And he said this based on astronomical calculations. But the theory of southern Russia appears to be more probable. Fine. And it is widely accepted by historians. They might have entered India from the very, like the southern Russia. They migrated from southern Russia and they entered from the like northwest of India, of the Indian subcontinent basically. And these Aryans, they spoke the language called as Sanskrit. Language. Now, what is Veda? Veda is derived from the word vid, which means to know. That is basically knowledge. It means superior knowledge, basically, to know something. The Vedic literature consists of four Vedas, that is Rig Veda, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva Veda. The Rig Veda is the earliest of the four Vedas. And it consists hymns, 1028 hymns. What are hymns? Hymns are like songs sung in the praise of God. So we have 1028 hymns. These are sung in praise of various gods. The Yajur Veda consists of various details of rules to be observed at the time of sacrifice. So during the Rig Veda, the Rigvedic people, that is the Aryans, started with some sort of sacrifices. But at this point in time, those sacrifices include only like grain sacrifice or like ghee sacrifice. But during the later Vedic age, they started sacrificing animals. Fine. So this is grains and ghee basically. So Yajurveda talks of the various, rules that are to be observed at the time of sacrifices. Then we have the Samaveda. Samaveda, what happens is the hymns that have been written in the Rig Vedic age or in the Rig Veda, they are set to tunes or set to tune. Basically, tune को set कर दिया है. किधर Samaveda, set to tune. What? Hymns set to tune. And these hymns were used for the purpose of chanting during sacrifices. So it is also called as the Book of Chants, and the origin of Indian music are traced in it. So basically, ragas basically. Atharva Veda consists of charms and like magical spells. Or basically black magic. So let's move on to the Rigvedic age. So during the Rigvedic age, Aryans were mostly confined to the Indus Valley. And the Rigveda also refers to Sapta Sindhu, that is seven, Sapta, the land of seven rivers basically. This includes 5 rivers of the Punjab. Basically, Indus के जो 5 tributaries है. कौन से? Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, BS, Satluj, along with Indus and Saraswati. Indus, the river, then Jhelum, Chenab, BS, Ravi, and Satluj. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and Saraswati. This was the land of the 7 rivers, Sapta Sindhu. That is the Indus Valley. The political, social, and cultural life of the Rigvedic people can be traced from the hymns of the Rigveda. Hymns, that is, those songs that were sung in praise of gods. Now, political organization. Of the Rigvedic. Basic unit of political organization was the Kula or family. Basic unit, Kula. Then several families joined together on the basis of the kinship. They would form a village or grama. First was Kula, then was grama. Kula was basically a family. Then village was called as grama. And the leader of the grama was called as Gramani. Just like how we have Sarpanch today. We had a Gramani at that point in time. And then many villages together constituted a Visa or Visu, basically. Kula was family, Grama was like a village, and then many villages together was a Visu. And it was headed by the Vishyapati. And then the highest political unit was called as Jana or tribe. So basically, during Rig Veda, we just had the Jana. During the later Vedic age, we had the Janapadas. And uh, during Magadha and all, we had Mahajanapadas. So that was the Mahajanapada, Magadha. So pehle Kula, then would come Grama, then Visu, and then Jana or tribe basically, the whole of the tribe basically. And there were several tribal kingdoms, such as the Bharatas or like Bharatas, Matsyas, Yadus, and Purus. And the Bharat clan plus Purus is Kurus actually. And the head of the kingdom was called as the Rajan or Raja. So basically, Jana was a kingdom or a tribe, and the king was called as Rajan. He headed it. The Rigvedic polity was normally monarchical and the succession was hereditary. Monarchy, kingship basically. Monarchy tha, and it was hereditary, obviously. राजा का ही बेटा राजा बनेगा. The king was basically assisted by the Purohita or priest and the Senani or commander in chief of the army basically. The king was like assisted in the day-to-day administration by the Purohit or priest and Senani, that is the commander in chief of the army. And there were two popular bodies called as the Sabha and Samiti. The Sabha was a council of elders, and the Samiti was a general assembly of the entire people. This was only of the elders, basically. Just like how today we have gerontocracy. Matlab the old people take all of the decisions. Just like how we have Khap Panchayats or like Jati Panchayats, they had like the Sabha. Fine. जैसे कि आज gerontocracy है. मतलब gerontocracy is like elders taking the decisions basically. And the Samiti was a general assembly of all people. Social life now. The society was patriarchal, which means Purush Pradhan society. Patriarchal, which means the man held the dominant position in the family. Or the man holding like the dominant position in the family. And the basic unit of society was the family or graham. And the head of the family was called as Grahapati. Head of the family, he was a male. Had to be a male. So monogamy was practiced generally, but polygamy was prevalent among the royal and noble families. So monogamy, that is having a single wife, basically. Monogamy, GMY. It was prevalent between like normal people. Among women. And polygamy, it was prevalent among royal families, royals and nobles, basically, the nobles of the king. The wife took care of the household, just like today, how women take care, which is called as the care economy. Basically, just like the care economy today. So, women in this era were given equal opportunities as men for the spiritual and intellectual development. So, equal opportunities for spiritual and intellectual development as that of men. But during the later Vedic age, we see that women were not given equal opportunities as that of men. When it came to the spiritual arena or like the intellectual arena, women were not allowed to get out of the, four walls of your houses. They were confined into the four walls of your houses. In this period, we also had women poets like Apala, Ghosha, Vishwavara, and Lopamutra. And in this period, women also attended those, like sabhas and samitis, those popular assemblies. That is the sabha and samiti. But during the later Vedic age, they were not allowed to. And there was no child marriage. And the practice of sati. And no practice of sati. But during the later Vedic age, we see the practice of sati, we see the practice of child marriage, and we also don't uh, see widow remarriage, basically. And both men and women both loved ornaments. So both wore ornaments, both men and women wore ornaments. Fine. Wheat, barley, milk, ghee, vegetables, fruits were the cheap articles of food, cheap products. Consider wheat, barley, milk, ghee, vegetables, and fruits. And the eating of the cow's milk, meat, was prohibited. Matlab, it was not allowed. Why? Because it was a sacred animal. Why sacred? Because these were Aryans were cattle rearing people. Because that was the wealth. Fine. So, which is why cow's meat was prohibited, since it was a sacred animal. And the pastimes, or you kill time here. So, कैसे? Chariot racing था, horse riding, dice basically, music, and dance. And the social divisions were not very rigid. Not rigid. We're talking of the Varna system here, the four Varnas. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. So this wasn't very, very rigid. It was flexible at that point in time. So if at all if you were born in a Brahmin family and you wanted to do something like an occupation that was related to Kshatriyas, you could do it. But during the later Vedic age, no. Everything was so rigid that if, you were born into a Kshatriya family, you couldn't do something that was related to Brahmanas or the other Varnas. So if you were born to like Vaishya parents, तो आपको merchants ही बनना है या फिर trade ही करना है. You couldn't do anything that was allowed to like Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, or even for that matter Shudras. Fine. Now we'll be talking of the economic condition. These are pastoral people, which means they required pastures, that is grasslands, primarily for cattle, because they were cattle rearing people. Cattle को कुछ खाने के लिए भी तो चाहिए, तो pastures basically grasslands. The wealth was estimated in terms of the cattle. जितना ज्यादा cattle उतना ज्यादा कोई rich है. Fine, more the number of cattle you own, the richer you are. When they permanently settled in North India, they began to practice agriculture. And with the knowledge and use of iron, basically, this is called as the Iron Age because we sort of found or like discovered iron for the very first time in this age. So, abhi knowledge kiska aa raha hai? Iron ka. So, using iron, it was very easy to like clean the forests. Fine. So, agriculture ke liye iron, which is why they could clear the forests relatively very easily. और फिर clear करके क्या करना है? You had to bring that land under cultivation. Carpentry was another important profession, and the availability of wood from the forests made the profession profitable. So, carpentry was another profession at that point in time. And these carpenters produced chariots and plows. And these carpenters were called as takshan. Takshan. Takhshans. Spinning was another important occupation. Cotton and wool, basically. Goldsmiths for making ornaments. Then we also had potters, like pottery. Even pottery was an important occupation at that point in time. Now, trade. It was an economic activity, very important economic activity. And rivers, basically. मतलब कौन सा? Indus का basically. It served as an important means of transport. And traders were called as pani or pani. And the barter system was called as pan. 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 And gold coins called as nishka. NISHK were used in like later times. Now the religion. So they worship the forces of nature, like the earth, fire, wind, rain, and thunder. These are also called as, Panchamahabhutas in Hinduism, like Prithvi, Agni, Jala, Vayu, and Akash. Main gods were Prithvi, that is earth, Agni, that is fire, Vayu, that is wind, Varuna, that is rain, and also Indra, or the god of thunder. And he was also called as Purandara, which is basically the breaker of forts. FORTS, forts. And Agni was regarded as an intermediary between gods and people. So basically, Agni का काम क्या था? So, during your havans and all, like the altars that you like do, the sacrifices that you do in the holy fire around the altars, basically. तो उस टाइम पे क्या बोला जाता था या फिर माना जाता था कि अग्नि, मतलब आप अग्नि में लाइक सैक्रिफाइसेस कर रहे हो ना, ग्रेन्स के या फिर लाइक घी का. सो बेसिकली इट वाज एन इंटरमीडिएरी, वो एक मीडिएटर था, वो मिडिल मैन था. किसके बीच में? गॉड और पीपल के बीच में. So people would, like sacrifice certain things, and in lieu of that, they would like, like want something else. For example, they would be, like doing sacrifices for like cattle, for like sons basically, or like daughters basically, like children. Fine. तो फिर वो क्या बोलेंगे कि आई एम डूइंग दिस सैक्रिफाइस सो दैट आई हैव अ लॉट ऑफ कैटल. सो बेसिकली अग्नि क्या करेगा? अग्नि अभी गॉड को जाके बताएगा कि इसको कैटल चाहिए, इसलिए वो सैक्रिफाइस कर रहा है. सो इट वाज अ मिडिल मैन बेसिकली. कौन? अग्नि. And Varuna was supposed to be the upholder of the natural order. Varuna, that is rain. Rain. There were also like female gods called as Aditi and Usha. Like female gods. But during the later Vedic age, we don't find any traces of, like female gods. And prayers, just like I said, during the sacrifices, they were offered to the gods in the expectation of rewards. और reward क्या रहेगा इनके time पे? Well, it was cattle. So cattle या फिर sons basically. And ghee, milk, grains were like given as offerings. And elaborate rituals were followed during the worship. Reward. And what was the reward? Cattle, basically. And ghee, milk, grain were given as offerings in the Havan or in the holy fire. Fine. So we are done with the early Vedic age.